Good evening and happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to each and every one of you. We are getting ready to get started with our pivot conversations. We have a few minutes before the 6 o'clock hour. So as you are coming in to the virtual classroom, I'd like for you to take a seat, comment, and let me know where you're watching from. Let me know the city and state you're watching from as you come in. Before we get started at 6 o'clock, I want you to take your virtual seat in the classroom and let me know what city and state you're watching from. Also, I would like for you to tag someone in this video, and also share this video, because we will be sharing part 5 of the teaching, the purpose of the pivot. So as you're coming in, I ask that you comment your city and state, where you're watching from, and then I would like for you to tag someone, share this video, invite someone to get some of this knowledge, some of this teaching, and share this video, as we will be sharing part 5 of the teaching, the purpose of the pivot. We are having our pivot conversations for the month of August. We have about another week of these teachings. I do them on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. So we are going to get started right at the 6 o'clock hour. Good evening, Lee Booker and Crystal Celestine. Thank you all for joining in. I see you all in this virtual session. Let me know if you can see me and hear me clearly. Let me know. Just say I can hear, I can see. Type that in the comments, please. If you are watching, please comment the city and state you're watching from, and let me know that you can see and hear. All right, Virginia is in the house. Hey, Chief. Alana, thank you for joining on tonight. We're going to get started right at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. I ask that you tag someone in the comments, invite someone. Thank you for letting me know that you can see and hear me clearly. Houston, Texas is in the house. Hey, Ingrid. Thank you for joining. Tag somebody in the comments, share this video, and we are going to get started right at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. Lafayette, Louisiana is in the house. Alexandria, Virginia is in the house. Thank you all. We are going to get started. It's 6 o'clock, so let's dive right in. I want to say good evening and thank you to each and every one of you who have jumped on this live with me this evening. I won't keep you long, 20 minutes max. That's max. That's if you all have questions that really need to be answered at the end of this. But I want to thank you all who are watching right now, but also if you are watching the replay, this comment does not apply to those who are watching live. If you are watching the replay, I just want you to type replay in the comments. I'm not sure if this is your first time tuning in or if you are returning for another pivot conversation. So my introduction may sound a little redundant for those of you who have been tuned in for the past few sessions, but for the sake of the newcomers, I want to reiterate, this month we will be focusing on the word pivot. And you may be wondering, what's the purpose of this and why should I listen? I'm glad you're wondering. So the purpose of the pivot is to help you navigate and pivot through changes in your life. I see you, first timer. All right, Leah Dunbar. Baldwin, Louisiana. The purpose of the pivot is to help you. The purpose of this teaching is to help you pivot and navigate through changes in your life, whether that change may be simple or complex. It may be as simple as implementing something new in your daily regimen, or something as complex as a career change or starting a new business. It may be something as simple as adding an additional challenge to your workout regimen, or something as complex as navigating through a relationship status change. Something as simple as being intentional about drinking more water throughout the day, or something as complex as setting a financial goal and sticking to it. Change is inevitable and it will happen. Whether it's forced, whether it's expected, or whether you initiate it. I'm here as the Change Navigator, as your pivot partner, to help you work through your fears, to help you simplify what seems to be complex as it relates to change, and to help you begin to live a life of joy and fulfillment once you implement necessary changes. I don't want you guys to think that I'm suggesting that all of this will be easy. I don't want you to think that I'm unaware of the mental, physical, and emotional changes or challenges that are associated with change. As a matter of fact, I want to say this right now, and this is going to sound very contradictory to all of the positive words I like to share about change, but brace yourself. Here's one thing you should understand. Anything that you undertake that you have the intentions of being ultimately successful is going to involve failure, okay? Anything that you undertake with the intentions of being ultimately successful is going to involve failure. So here's what you should do. You should expect to fail. Yes, expect to fail. Not to fail your ultimate mission or your ultimate goal, but expect failure en route to success. Again, change is inevitable, change will happen, and expect to fail. That sounds very encouraging, right? Yeah, I know it doesn't sound encouraging at all. As a matter of fact, it sounds like something anyone would want to avoid. Yeah, so let's just stop right now. Let's avoid change so we can avoid failure. That sounds good, right? But I know that I'm not talking and sharing information with quitters. I'm not sharing this information with people who are looking for an easy way out. I'm inclined to believe that if you tuned in, you are up for a challenge and you want to do better, or you want to be better than you were last year at this time, or better than you were 6 months ago, better than you were a month ago, and yes, even better than you were on yesterday. So who's going to let a little change and a little failure stop them from being ultimately successful? Let me pause and ask you this question. What does ultimately successful look like to you? I want you to take some time and think about that and come back to that a little later. But the question is, what does ultimately successful look like to you? All right, now back to the teaching. We have been talking about pivot. We've been talking about pivoting during the pandemic. I have something else that I want to share with you all eventually, and it's going to be called pivoting under pressure. That's going to be really good, so just stay tuned and keep your eye out for the notification about that one. So let's talk about pivot again. The subject has not changed. We are talking about pivot for the month of August. And in its simplest terms, and for the purpose of what I'm discussing, according to dictionary.com, pivot means to turn on. The other definition it provided as it relates to basketball is to keep one foot in place while holding the ball and moving the other foot one step in any direction. So one step in any direction is a pivot, right? While holding the other foot in place. So I remember when I started learning how to play basketball and about the fundamentals of the game in middle school. And my coach at the time was the late Mrs. Frances Leday. She's actually a Gramblinite. Woohoo. But she taught us to pivot, especially when we were trapped in a corner or facing a turnover. So we understand what it means to pivot, but why should we pivot? What is the purpose? So far in these pivot conversations, I've shared 4 reasons we should pivot, I've shared 4 purposes of the pivot. And tonight I'm going to give you the 5th reason. But the 4 reasons, the first 4 are, number 1, the purpose of the pivot is to give you extra space to think and to create. The purpose of the pivot is to give you extra space to think and to create. Number 2, the purpose of the pivot is to give you an alternative. Therefore, anytime a problem presents itself, the solution is always present. the alternative, right? Number 3, the purpose of the pivot is to see something differently. Number 4, the purpose of the pivot is to get you out of trouble. Tonight, we are going to focus on number 5. Number 5, the purpose of the pivot is to give you a little breathing room before making a bad or impulsive decision. Now, let me remind you that all of these references come from learning how to play basketball, but they can be applied to real life, particularly in making changes to your life. So we've all been guilty of making impulsive decisions, right? I'm going to share some examples. I'm not saying these are bad decisions, but I am saying these could be impulsive decisions. So if we can be honest, we've made some impulsive decisions during this pandemic. Let me use an example. How many of you have purchased something on Amazon or just purchased something online and realized it was an emotional purchase? If that's you, just click the like button or click the love button. You purchased something on Amazon or something online. It was an emotional purchase while you were stuck in the house in the pandemic. Was that you? No judgments. I'm just asking a question. Or maybe it was something drastic, not necessarily during the pandemic, but you found yourself feeling a certain kind of way, so you cut your hair. Or you colored your hair a color you wouldn't have normally chosen. Just click the like or the love button if that was you. Maybe your impulsive decision is to get a drink instead of addressing the real issue. Or maybe your impulsive decision is to have wild sex with a complete stranger while out of town on a business trip. Maybe your impulsive decision is to say what you really feel without regards to someone else's feelings, knowing that it will not make the situation any better. You get my drift? An impulsive decision happens with not much thought. You just do it because of how you're feeling in the moment. In that moment, feelings override logic. Let's just really sit here and think about it. You guys know that I like to unpack, and you know that I like to talk about what you're feeling in your body when you do certain things. So let's talk about what goes on in your body when you are in the middle of making an impulsive decision. It's like an adrenaline rush. Your heartbeat increases. Sometimes you have sweaty palms. It's like you have some sort of inner smile that may not be reflective on your face. You may even grit your teeth, or you may rub your hands together. It's that temporary high that's not associated with drugs. It's that feel good in the moment sensation. None of us are exempt from making impulsive decisions, just like none of us are exempt from feeling regret that comes along with impulsivity. It goes like this. It feels good, but it's accompanied with regret. It feels good, but it's later accompanied with, if I had just thought through this. It feels good, but it's later accompanied with, how do I fix this? Listen, I admit sometimes impulsive decisions are fun and they make you feel as though you are living in the moment. And I'm definitely not trying to remove fun from your lives, especially from these lives we are living right now that seem to be filled with more boredom than we've ever experienced in our entire lives. I want you to have fun while living your life, but I also want you to be cognizant of what happens when we make impulsive decisions. Therefore, if the purpose of the pivot is to give you a little breathing room before making a bad or impulsive decision, what's the benefit of it and how is it applied to making changes? Well, I believe the benefit is in the fact that having a clear head and using logic will decrease the moments of regret while making changes. It will decrease the instances of the do-over while making changes. We already learned that failure will happen while we are trying to be ultimately successful. Therefore, we should endeavor to be wise and to utilize the time we are given and the clear headspace we have to make necessary changes. Am I suggesting that you don't take a risk? Of course not. I'm not suggesting that you don't take risk. I believe risk taking will show you how to jump. I believe risk taking will let you know that you can actually fly when you jump. I'm suggesting when you find yourself having an occurrence of impulsivity, that you take a moment and think. Take a moment and think. Think about the pros and cons. Think of the best possible solution. Think beyond how you are feeling in that moment. Remember the goal. Remember the purpose. Remember what you are working on. When faced with impulsivity, try to rely more on logic and try to intentionally, here we go, try to intentionally do the opposite of what you feel. And believe me, I know that's hard. And it actually doesn't feel so rewarding in the moment. A simple impulsive decision as it relates to change is this: don't quit. That's it. The simplest, most common impulsive decision you may be faced with when you are dealing with change is to quit. That's what I mean. The simple, most common impulsive decision you'll face when dealing with changes is to quit. But when you are faced with that decision to quit, try to rely more on logic by reflecting on your progress. Try to do the opposite of what you feel, which may be to keep pushing or simply take a small break. I can guarantee you that doing the opposite of what you feel is a challenge all by itself, but it will strengthen your self-control when you do it. All right? So that is my teaching for tonight, but I always want to leave you guys with a little homework. So I give the homework at the end of every teaching, and I really do want to know if you guys have been doing the homework assignments. Well, regardless, if you have or if you have not, I'm still going to give homework because I know it makes you better. So here's the homework. Number 1, identify 3 impulsive decisions you've made in the last 3 months. And these decisions don't have to be relative to any goal or anything like that. All right? Then number 2, I want you to identify impulsive decisions you've made as it relates to changes you've been trying to implement in your life. Identify the impulsive decisions you've made as it relates to changes you have been trying to implement in your life. Then number 3, I want you to identify how you felt in that moment of impulsivity. Identify it. Talk about it. Write it down. Number 4, write down any regrets that you felt as a result of those decisions. Write down any regrets you felt as a result of those decisions. And number 5, write down a plan to overcome impulsivity when you are faced with it again, as it relates to changes you are trying to implement in your life. Write down a plan, because remember, one of the things you're going to have to do when you are faced with impulsivity, you're going to have to try to do the opposite of what you are feeling. All right, that's it for the teaching. Are there any questions or comments? I see Dawn and Alana have been having their own chat during this entire teaching, but are there any other questions or comments before I get off here? If you enjoyed it, just give me some thumbs up. Let me know you enjoyed the teaching. All right, I see some thumbs up. I see some people are laughing at me because my dog decided to do the food during this time. But anyway, Thank you all for tuning in. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at thechangenavigator@gmail.com and we can talk about it further. All right. You all have a good night, and I will be back on Thursday evening.